Hello, and welcome to my Therapist Plays Disco Elysium analysis series. So, I'm pretty excited about today's episode because we are finally engaging with some of the broader ideas that tie the world of Disco Elysium together. We're finally going to investigate what the idea of the Pale is and what that means for our character to start discovering it at this time. This is genuinely one of the most profound subjects that I've encountered in the game so far, and I have a lot to say about it. So, at the beginning of this episode, I'm just kind of talking with Joyce, getting a lot of information about the Pale, and in the latter half, I'll be giving you my interpretation of this, both from a personal perspective as well as a theoretical psychology one. It turns out that the concept of the Pale resonates very deeply with some of my personally held beliefs, as well as many that hold up my theoretical orientation around the practice of psychology. There's a lot I'm excited to share in this episode, so let's get right into it.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? Not an umbrella, I hope. I don't need one myself, you see.
All around you, rain keeps falling down. On the wooden boards she's standing on, and on the water around you.
I could use a coat like that.
Sadly, I need this one myself. It's hydrophobic, repels water, almost magically. The company makes them for offshore platform personnel. Very sturdy. What I can do for you is answer some questions. Nothing like talking to pass a rainy day.
I've got some questions about reality.
More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day.
What
Go ahead,
times are
ask
these?
me anything. These are unimportant times, Detective. You and I were born after the dust had settled. 1,000th of a second too late.
For what?
For the big time.
The smile of a predator. No doubt what she's got in mind.
What's the big
The
time?
revolution.
And what is this revolution I keep hearing
It's
about?
quite easy. Every 100 years or so, our species gets together to decide what's next, who gets shot in the head, and who gets the mineral rights. It's a real kerfuffle.
Who got shot in the head?
Those would be the communists. Generally speaking, 40 million people got shot in the head during the World Revolution. But the communists, they all got shot in the head.
She's not gloating. It's a relieved celebration.
Oh, and the anarchists too. They shot them well. So well, one forgets they even existed.
Did the communists and the anarchists shoot
Did
back?
they ever? Before they got shot themselves, they shot 2 million people.
Truly a kerfuffle.
It was a kerfuffle, all right.
Yes, the Insulindian deluge, they call it.
I had a deluge too in my head.
Yes, an acute thiamine deficiency can be exacerbated by alcoholism. Exacerbated means made worse.
We probably just need more magnesium for that. Anyone else get shot in the
Lots
head?
of people. Even the king got shot in the head, or thrown beneath a horse, or drowned. Accounts differ. It was unceremonious. Just as well, he wasn't actually the king. Just the king's nephew. The real king abdicated and lived out a long and productive life as a venture capitalist in Grad.
I don't really care about any of
About
this.
head shooting.
That's enough about the
They are
times.
what
I
they
just-
are. Who knows? An afterbloom may yet come. Anyway, enough sentimentality. Is there anything else you want to know?
What are you?
What I am not is a basic term of reality.
Everyone wants to talk about themselves. She will, in time.
What is this acute encephalopathy?
It's a neurological disorder caused by a lack of vitamin B in the brain. Symptoms include retrograde
Vitamins.
amnesia. It's quite serious. You should get yourself checked out.
She conveys it in short, cold bursts, trying not to invest too deeply in the condition of this doomed detective.
What causes encephalopathy?
Well, it's either bariatric surgery or long-term alcohol use?
It's definitely the
She
drinking.
nods slowly.
Yes, I perform autoerotic asphyxiation on yourself with your funny necktie out in the open somewhere.
Okay. Conceptualization, 58%. That's not very good. Do you have anything
Glad
that
to have been
can
of assistance.
help with conceptualization? Oh, I do. A white t-shirt. Let's pop that boy on. I'm not sure how a t-shirt helps me with that. And a jacket. Uh, yeah, there we go. Wow, we're looking pretty good, actually. Okay. Less, we're bumming it a little less.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? More lessons in basic reality?
Okay,
My
we've
favorite
got
part
up
of the day. Go ahead.
83% now.
Ask me anything.
Let's fucking go for it. Or does it work that I can like try it
Glad to have been of assistance.
and then put the clothes on and try it again because that's like a change in my stat? Does that work? Let's try that.
You're back. Good. What more lessons in basic reality?
Let's try it. 72%.
My favorite part of the day.
What is all of this? The scent, the
There we go.
sound, the air.
What world is
What
this?
world? The only one, I suppose. The world of matter. And its pale antipode.
The camera of her mind glides over the surface of the water.
What do you see?
Great bodies of water. Forest-covered surfaces. Clusters of light where the cities lie. You've seen the montage. We all have. This world is enough.
Okay, Joyce. I'm quite poetic here.
There is a term of endearment they coined for it in the DeLorean century, when humanity was high on this world, discovering more and more of it, these archipelagos included.
What is it?
Elysium.
Oh, shit! Elysium. The world needs a term of endearment.
It does. There are those who would call it hell.
What is hell?
A term of hatred that originates, like many such things, with the Mesk petro-fascists.
I don't feel like I have the whole picture yet.
Oh, you want a picture of the world? There is no complete set yet, dear. They're having some trouble reaching orbit.
Why?
Great things are difficult to achieve. For now, we're viewing the world from the inside, sideways.
Inside, sideways. What shape is this world then?
We used to think it was a sphere, but that is beginning to look less and less likely by the day. You wouldn't know it from the tabloids, but the ORG nations have been launching weather balloons into the lower ionosphere since the 30s.
Technically, it's an oblate spheroid.
ORG, Occident Reverchol Grad.
There's a steadily increasing trickle of images. Between the big three scientific contributors, they're piecing together a dark grey corona. Yes.
Okay.
Hail covers 72% of the surface. There are grey flares and prominences, even arcs above entire isolas. The images are blurry, but if there was a sphere in there, it certainly looks like it fractured a long time ago.
A cold fear seeps into you.
The pale. And what do you mean corona?
They say there is a rarefied envelope of matter surrounding the darkened disk of our planet. That is, if we are still living on a planet. Or, to speak more plainly, imagine vast swathes of land disrupted by nothingness.
Are we in like a dark city scenario?
I am sorry, dear. It must sound quite terrifying through the acute encephalopathy. Even
She's
scientific
quite right about that.
positivism isn't entirely convinced about what we're dealing with here. But this is one of the greatest questions of our time. Maybe when they get the complete set together, it will jolt us out of our rut, bring us together, however naive it may sound.
And then everything will be okay.
I don't know about things of that scale. My expertise lies in nations and trade routes. one or several layers below everything. But yes, we'll be fine. Don't worry.
She does not seem convinced that you'll be fine. If anything, she's realizing how deep your condition runs.
It certainly doesn't feel like I'm
You have
fine.
misimagined it. I don't have the power to convey to you the effect and geometry of the images that depict our world from below low orbit. It's like the crowning of the world. It's insane. Very disco. You'd love it.
Well, if you say it's disco.
See? Everyone finds something worth holding on to in this world, however wasted its opportunities.
The cold seeps into you. The air is heavy with 80% humidity. Suddenly, you're conscious of yourself standing there, on whatever this all is. Your arms hang down by your sides. The lieutenant observes you both, silently. He adjusts his glasses.
You said pale. What is
The pale
pale?
is not, technically speaking, part of reality.
Yes. Also, I think we've had enough excitement for today. We do have a case to attend to.
His voice is low, but firm. All she can say is,
Kim does not seem to like the idea of this pale. Every time it comes up in conversation, he's kind of like, don't ask about that. We've got things to do.
Of course, Lieutenant. Let's try something else.
Why does everyone seem to know what this thing is and be included on the obscurity of it except us? What do you mean it's not a part of reality?
Ma'am, remember you are dealing with a very sensitive and impressionable police officer who is still recovering from a recent medical episode.
The Lieutenant's right. Let's change topics. What do you want to know? Anything.
but she wants to tell you.
Maybe we can come back without
You
Kim.
could sneak back later when he's not around, unless you can convince him to step aside.
I mean, Kim trusts us at this point, so 97%, that's pretty damn good. Our volition is absolutely magged up, so let's fucking go for it.
Good idea. Just ask him. He won't make a scene.
Kim, can I talk to the man alone for a
Fine.
second?
See? What can he do? You're a grown man.
Yeah, okay, let's find out what this pale
Are
is
you
now.
sure you're sure? Your colleague seemed adamant.
The thing is, Joyce, I'm very curious.
Okay. The pale is the most dominant geological feature of the world, Detective. The separative tissue between the islas. It is the interoceanic mass.
Okay, what's an isla?
Isla is a Messinian word for a continent of matter, enveloped on all sides by the pale. Also, isolation, or landmass. We used to believe there was only one. In the last 4 centuries, we have discovered 7.
So, what I'm imagining is like there's multiple different realities that are separated by oceans of this pale, but you cannot simply cross them like you might an ocean.
Mundi, Seol, Samara, Ilmara, Grad, Katla, and this, Insulinde.
And Insulinde
An
is...
oceanic isla. It comprises mostly of water. Muindi is the largest, Katla the coldest, Insulinde the bluest. What can I say? Each is perishing and dear.
Okay, what is the pale like?
Achromatic, odorless, featureless. The pale is the enemy of matter and life. It is not like any other, or anything in the world. It is the transition state of being into nothingness.
Is it here?
No, Detective. We're safe. It begins there, 6,000 kilometers to the north, and even more to the south, east, and west. You are in the middle of the isla.
As your gaze instinctively turns north, a small black pit opens up in your stomach.
6,000 kilometers from the end of the
Yes.
world.
That is enough. Many cities are built much closer.
What I'm wondering is if the pale has like increased over time. Like, was there anything in these places, and has something about the world caused it to decay? and rot into this pail. Like some sort of receding mass of ice.
An uproar of matter, darling, rising into the pail, rolling, evaporating even. The great vision. The area of transition between the world and the pale is called porch collapse. Imagine a grey coronal mist, cold vapour marked by spores of an opportunistic microorganism, a mold that's adapted to grow at the edge of the unrest. It's the most disco thing you will ever see.
Oh, I like things that are disco.
You hear your pulse rise. The air feels caustic and cold suddenly.
How do you get from Isola to Isola?
Oh, it is so difficult for us. It is possible to force dimensions on the pale. In modern times, we can even compress its latitude, bouncing radio waves from one end to the other, shortening the path. But it is still hard for humans to navigate the pale without getting lost or having our minds damaged.
The pale can damage the mind?
Extensively.
How?
Some say the damage stems from extreme sensory deprivation. Others argue that pale somehow consists of past information that's degrading, that it's rarefied past, not rarefied matter.
That's sort of what I was thinking about, like not just matter falling away into it, but like temporal things
They
as well.
call it the blend over of the self. The pale does not only suspend the laws of physics, but also the laws of psychology, maybe history even. The human mind becomes over-radiated by past.
What does this over-radiation feel like?
It feels terrible. Absolutely terrible. International standards strictly limit civilian travelers to 6 days of pale exposure per year.
You're not a civilian passenger?
No, nameless detective of the Citizens Militia. I am a member of the entreprenetic business class. I'm cleared and trained for 22 days of pale transit annually.
Do lorry drivers pass the pale? Are you
Up to
over-radiated?
my gills, officer.
An acidic smile on her lips. It's getting worse every year.
So she's sick. What is entreprenetic?
Entreprenetics is the scientific study of the pale, or a
This is
recent
fascinating.
iteration of it by way of grad. The study of the pale reaches back 6,000 years. The Pericarnassians called it the Western Plain.
Did they cross it?
There are signs of pre-modern crossings. Successful navigation of the pale relies not just on technical know-how, but intensive psychological preparation. Some of these tactics have been known for thousands of years.
Maybe it wasn't the alcohol. Maybe we've had some serious exposure to this shit.
Nothing. We remain powerless before the pale. The only real advance in pale transit is the speed with which an aerostatic craft can pierce it. Less exposure leads to less effects later.
Aerostatic
Hybrid
craft.
airships, detective. Conventional rotors or jet engines no longer add velocity after the point of reference for motion is suspended, once you've crossed from near pale to far pale. In essence, we throw them in and they come out the other end. If we throw them precisely.
If we don't?
Then they don't.
How much pale is there compared to the
The
world?
pale outweighs reality 2 to 1. There is
Holy
more
shit.
pale than there is matter, and the ratio is slipping.
It is slipping, like the ice caps.
What do you think, detective?
It's growing. There's more and more of the pale.
Precisely. One of the few measurable effects of the pale is that it is expanding at an unknown rate. An intuitive conclusion of that development is that one day the pale will cover everything. But this sort of talk is mostly left to extremists.
Where would we go?
Most people, and indeed most private and government sector organizations, entire civilizations and religions even, find handy ways to ignore or downplay that knowledge.
This is very climate change coded.
I suggest you do the same.
So maybe that's where Kim's avoidance of this subject comes from, because, like, I mean, it would encourage people to invest less in the causes that they're carrying out. If everyone fucking knew about this and it was actually an urgent matter, it would compel people to think probably more or less, depending on the person, of like short-term gain. I imagine there's some efforts to figure out, like, yeah, either study what they can do to reverse the spreading of the Pale or its growth, or to escape it somehow. But you have to wonder, like, for people like Everard Clare who are trying to exert their influence, like, do you stop caring about crafting a legacy just because everything is going to degrade? I don't think so. That's not what terror management theory would suggest, right? That's very interesting.
Off we go. You see the hanged man's mouth open.
Off we go into the wild Pale yonder.
One and all. They say Pale is death, but for the universe,
Why should we just leave, and the world get left behind?
What are its physical
it's
qualities?
difficult to describe or even measure. Something whose fundamental property is the suspension of properties. Physical, epistemological, linguistic. The further into Pale you travel, the steeper the degree of suspension, right down to the mathematical. Numbers stop working. No one has yet passed the number barrier. It may be impossible.
It's like a black hole. Well, let's return to reality.
Yes, sweet reality. But before we do, tell me, Detective, is this the first time you're hearing this? Do you really not remember anything?
I sometimes sense vague shadows of a past, and it's not good.
Then tell me, what do you think of the Pale?
It's very disco. It will end all life. That we continue to persist at all is a testament to our faith in one another. Its advance can only be stopped with immediate, total, ruthless communism. A powerful anti-communist force. They have it coming. Who am I to think any of it? I mean, that would be quite boring of me to think. I mean, it's going to end all life. It's going to consume us all, which I don't find terrifying in the slightest. I mean, that's what's going to happen to literally everyone and everything at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Her eyes tense, crow's feet radiate from them. She observes you, your bloodshot eyes open and swollen
Your
face.
ailing constitution, sweaty forehead, the beads there, and your heavy breathing.
You really didn't know. This does not spell good for the investigation, Detective.
Why
If you
is it
don't know
relevant?
even this, then
I mean, I guess this is something everyone knows about. I wonder what Fritta Girl thinks about the Pale. I wonder if we can ask her. I'll handle it. This investigation will be my masterpiece, the one they remember me by, I promise. So yeah, I mean, like, this whole subject I can't help but put it into the framework of terror management theory, which I've probably talked briefly about in this series, but I've certainly talked a lot about it in other analytical pieces that I've done. So terror management theory is based on the ideas of Ernest Becker, who wrote a book called The Denial of Death. And Ernest Becker was an anthropologist who was sort of studying the rituals and perspectives on ideas about death and afterlife and all kinds of things across like many different cultures. And his investigation was basically, how do people cope with this idea of we're all going to die someday? Because really, like, almost every single institution is built around this. Like, religious institutions are designed around either coping with life while you have it or preparing yourself for an afterlife. Political systems are in some ways branched out of this idea, right? Like the urgency to have resources and to spread your influence all centers around the idea of like self-preservation, right? This is just something we're naturally designed to want and to desire and to need as like living creatures, right? So Ernest Becker wrote this book, The Denial of Death. It won a Pulitzer Prize. And In it, he talked about the idea of a immortality project, which is something a person individually engages with that they feel will bring them like their legacy, right? And an immortality project could be basically anything. It could be your family, it could be an investigation. So these were some of his ideas, and there were several psychologists who took those ideas and actually brought like real um, psychological grounding to, right? And so they did a lot of studies and research on why people engage in certain behaviors and what level of fear about their own death can sort of correlate with the lifestyles, religious institutions, and choices in life that they make, right? So terror management theory is all centered around the idea that like everyone has a certain amount of death anxiety. We're all faced with the idea that we're not going to live forever, and this acknowledgement makes us want to do things which lower that anxiety, right? Some people just engage with it through avoidance, like denying their death, right? That's what the title of denial of death refers to. But what they found is that people who had less anxiety engaged in activities which raised their self-esteem. So self-esteem acts as a buffer to death anxiety, meaning that ideas about death, ideas about mortality, ideas about loss can be buffered or reduced when a person's self-esteem is raised. And so we engage in things that raise our self-esteem. We develop immortality projects, right? Things that will outlast us. So this could be, yeah, like your investment in creating a family, right? Passing down your values and your genetics gives you a sense of security about the fact that, like, yes, you're going to die, but some parts of you will be left behind and carried on, right? So rather than looking for a legitimate kind of immortality, we're looking for something called symbolic immortality, right? And much of the research points to this idea that this is what we're seeking out, right? This is one of the reasons that we actually engage in the idea of culture altogether, because yes, I could have a symbolic immortality in the fact that, like, let's say I wrote an amazing book and that's going to outlast me and whatever, but it will outlast me more if other people are also aware of it and buy into it and spread it around and become attached to it, become inspired by it, maybe make something that's based on it, right? So culture, the idea of more and more people grouping up around a collection of ideas and laws and stability, makes it more likely that the things I'm investing in with my symbolic immortality will also be amplified and secured by this. And terror management theory will also suggest that the more I contribute to my cultural worldview, right, the more I participate in laws, the more I participate in its economy, in its politics, in my own career, the more strength my cultural worldview has, the more likely that the things I put in to my immortality project will increase, and the less insecure I can feel about my own death. When you put that in the context of multiple different cultures, this is where terror management theory is able to explain like everything about human behavior, because what they're suggesting is that, okay, my cultural worldview, let's say, is doing pretty well, right? And a cultural worldview doesn't just mean my country. It could also be a collection of cultural ideas like Western ideology, for example, right? But the presence of another cultural worldview that differs from my own is, in some ways, a threat to my cultural worldview. So the more I see other people contributing to an idea that has the potential to threaten my own and either minimize it or extinguish it, I'm compelled to see this other culture as an enemy, right? And so this explains intercultural differences from a terror management theory perspective. Why we have anxiety about other races, why we have anxiety about other empires, why we have anxiety about people who have a different fucking sports team than us, right? Because some of the research in terror management theory points to it's like a sequence of beliefs, right? That all happen at a kind of subconscious level. I'm afraid that I'm going to die someday. I must do something that prevents me from this anxiety, right? So I contribute to my own cultural worldview. The sports team of my local country in some ways represents the ideologies of that country, right? They fly our flag. They are represented by the top athletes. Um, they are figures of inspiration, celebrities. All of these ideas are attached to Immortality Project mentality. And so your sports team winning against mine is like a diminishing part of my cultural worldview that's being threatened by the gaining ground in yours. And so the fact that you associate with that sports team and I associate with this one, I see you as a threat to my own symbolic immortality. And so it's just like layered escalation of ideas that, yeah, we're not thinking about like, I am mad at you because your sports team won. It's because I'm really afraid of my own death. But like terror management theory is an extremely robust, well researched perspective in modern psychology. And it looks at this kind of stuff, right? And I've actually participated a little bit in that. So when I was doing my master's thesis, my research project was on looking at people's creative motivations. So what I wanted to understand more about was why I engage in so many creative activities, why I feel this like existential urge to create things, whether that be writing, music, this, whatever this is, this like eurobrady project, all of the things that we engage in creatively, like what compels us to do it? Well, I took a scale that measures creative motivation as being about why do we create things? Well, there's an instrumental purpose to everything we create, a function, right? If I create a tool, its function is to be used for this specific purpose. The instrumental purpose of this content is for you to enjoy it, right? That's its function. The quality of the creative experience is another reason people create, right? It's just fun to write a song. The feeling I get when I create something is good. So I have a function and I have a certain quality to the experience, is why I create it. But there's also a personal value, right? Like I'm making this because it's an extension of my career that I get to have fun with. It's a bridging of my two interests, psychology and video games and storytelling and all of those things. So there's a personal validity quality to what I'm doing here, right? And so I looked at that scale and I had people basically answer a series of questions that would point to, okay, well, why does this person engage in a creative activity? Is their purpose more for the function, for the quality, or the personal value? I had those same people take pretty standard like death anxiety scale, which exposes you to certain ideas about death, right? Like how much anxiety might you feel when you think about preparing a funeral? How often do you think about death? Um, how much anxiety does it provoke to think about the death of a loved one, right? How long did you feel feelings of grief, right? It's a lot of questions about death. And I compared the two results and looked at, okay, so the people who have overall higher death anxiety, can we look at that score and look at what they scored on the creative motivation scale and see a pattern? And the pattern showed that the people with a higher sense of death anxiety would engage in creative processes based on the personal value, right? Which does point to this idea of terror management theory. Like the more I feel this existential dread, the more urgency I feel to make something that represents me and can like crystallize my identity so that I don't just go nowhere when I die, right? So that I don't just like degrade into nothingness like this pale is talking about. And that was really interesting because like it basically matched up with what a lot of the terror management theory research says about this problem. And Ernest Becker in The Denial of Death talks a lot about creativity as also existential exercise in contributing to a worldview or as an immortality project. And so that's what I think of when I look at this line. This investigation will be my masterpiece, the one they will remember me by, I promise. Like, I tend to take a terror management theory perspective on lots of stuff because it's something I resonate deeply with. It's something that I have firsthand experience investigating. And yeah, it's something I can see in my own behaviors. Like, I feel such an existential need to create as much as I can, to document everything I think and care about, because like I don't want to go nowhere after I'm gone. I want there to be at least some way to interpret me, and for some facet of me to extend beyond like my ability to control it, right, while I'm still alive. Um, and in a world where they are surrounded by the knowledge that everyone and everything and every memory will eventually have this like entropic uh, degradation, it's a very terror management theory sort of idea that everyone would be sort of trying to contribute to their cultural worldview, to their personal immortality project, that the tensions between political systems and economic systems and people vying for control would only deepen, because if there's any chance of survival, it's in memory, it's in legacy, it's in how people carry on the ideas that you left behind, right? The personal value of something more than the monetary value or the instrumental purpose of it. This is why I'm so focused on things like Kuno's experience, right? Because not only do I feel like he could contribute significantly to his cultural worldview, but by helping him, that's what I feel like I'm doing, right? Like, as a therapist, this is the reason I'm in this career. Like, I want to have a lasting impact. I want to improve the overall quality of my culture, the place that's around me, right? And that doesn't even mean this country necessarily, just the people in my own ecological system of influence. Because the better off people around me are, the more they succeed, the more likely it is that my immortality project has a greater chance of survival as well. So it makes complete sense to me now why everyone in this world is doing this. And it makes me question the people who are avoidant of that, right? Those are the people who have maybe the highest amount of death anxiety and are in the denial of death mindset, right? Looking towards either saying that's not going to happen, there's some other way we'll survive this, or it doesn't matter anyway, sort of becoming nihilistic, right? And that puts Kim in a very interesting category as opposed to Joyce, who I think deeply resonates with this idea like we have, because she has firsthand experience of this degradation, right? She can actually relate to our mind being the way it is, not due to alcohol abuse, but due to her exposure to what is essentially death anxiety, right? A physical void-like weave of uh, death anxiety and this mortality salience, right? This awareness of the temporary nature of everything. So yeah, I mean, this has me thinking a lot about this world now and recontextualizing everything in it. And maybe it's fitting that way together for me because my perspective is so shaped by the ideas of terror management theory and thanatology in general, right? The study of death and dying. So I'm very glad that they give me this option because this is something I deeply resonate with. Like, I can only hope that there's something I can create in my lifetime that will give me some reprieve from my own death anxiety, right? So let's go forward with that.
I hope so. I truly do. If I may suggest, hold on to your colleague, Kitsuragi. I ran a check on him and he is very competent. In the meanwhile,
Some of that assurance is meant for herself, as much as it's meant for you. She must have a lot on the line here.
You have me. I will assist you in any way I can, even if we have to do it one basic term at a time.
Good.
Okay.
You have not passed out from it. Perhaps I worried for nothing. Are we still on the reality lowdown, or should we do actual police work now?
So Kim was actually worried that being exposed to awareness of the Pale would, like, impair us, basically. But I personally think it's brought our death anxiety down, because this idea right here is literally what I was talking about. If I feel like there is something people will remember me by and I am dedicated to that, that is my immortality project. I do not care if the world ends. I feel like, just like matter, the memory of things can't not exist anymore. It has to go somewhere. And that's what I'll have done. This protects me from the impending doom of being swallowed by the void, because I will have at least accomplished something that outlives me. It's fucking beautiful that they've incorporated this. You needn't have worried.
But I did. Anyway.
It's also very sweet that Kim was worried about us.
Damn it, you're a grown man, the lieutenant thinks. Shouldn't have gotten protective hair.
Ah! Kim. All right, let's get back to work.
Good luck, detectives.
All right. I think that was one of the most profound conversations I've had yet in this game. And it has fucking nothing to do with the case or any of the characters in specific. Like, the fact that it's just a broad contextual element of this world, but that it has absolutely everything to do with what our character is experiencing, and that this is now a piece of the puzzle that's been filled in. Like, it totally recontextualizes our motivations and why we're doing this. We're doing this to survive the plague of reality slipping away, because we can't deny our death. We can only find ways to be symbolically immortal against it. And in the midst of all that conversating, our amphetamine high wore off. And now this is probably where the guilt and the shame sets in, especially because we didn't really do much productive with that relapse. But we did learn something about ourselves and the world. And maybe that's one of the things that protects us from all of that doom as well. Well, on to the next crisis. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, consider giving it a like and letting me know what you thought of it in the comments. You can subscribe to catch the next video here, or you can see things a little bit earlier if you support the channel either through Twitch or Patreon. Links to both of those and the community Discord are in the description. Thanks again, and I will see you next time. Bye.